Katie, I'm going into this completely blind. I have no idea what you're bringing to the floor, but I'm
Okay.
super excited because you mentioned that you would like to share your story. So I'm just going to open this up. What is your story and how would you phrase it? What is your mothering story?
Okay. So my mothering story is since I can remember, I wanted to be a mother. So out of my family, I have a brother and a sister, and I have some step siblings. And out of everyone, I was always the one that always wanted children. Um, that was from quite a young age. So even by 18, I already knew that I really wanted a child. And I think when I was 18, possibly like other people, I just assumed that that would happen by I think at that time I thought 30 was very old, so I would be married with a couple of kids and have my job and have my life. Um, so that was the sort of image impression I had of what my life would be. Uh, as I was going into my 20s, I think I still wanted that, but I was for sure not in a place where I was ready for any of that. So that didn't happen in my 20s. As I was coming in my 30s, I was still very much wanting children. It was starting to become probably a bit more of a stress because of people saying, okay, that the clock's ticking. I still wanted this very badly, but I didn't seem to be any closer to having it. I was enjoying myself quite a lot. I was going out. I was socializing a lot, not having relationships that were particularly successful. So I was feeling like this goal was further and further away. I never wanted to be a single mother by choice. So that wasn't something that I had entertained, even though I really wanted a child. So I kind of sat for quite a long time with wanting a child, but not really being close to getting it. Um, I then retrained in my job as a pediatric occupational therapist, and I decided to retrain when I was in my late 30s. And I was in a relationship with someone who was a bit older than me, said they wanted children. Like, okay, this is probably going to happen now. Became a parent after, I don't know, probably only a couple of months that that wasn't going to happen. So we finished our relationship. And then I went to online dating, which I had done before. So I thought, okay, I'll force myself to do this again, where I met my now husband. So we met when we were 40, and we both from quite early on said that we'd wanted children. We were aware that we were the age that we were. So we sort of early on, we tried naturally and that wasn't happening. So we went to do some investigation, and they said at that time, your fertility actually for your age is quite good, but we recommend that you start IVF quite quickly. So we had that information, but then life continued to be life, and actually our relationship wasn't at all ready at that point. So we had a lot of things to work through. We actually almost had split up. We got into quite a difficult place, but we didn't split up. We knew that when we went for counseling, we would either end up as parting ways respectfully as friends, or that we would make our relationship stronger. Fortunately, it made our relationship stronger. So we were wanting to pursue having a child. And then I think, again, life, busy career, I was a bit scared of the IVF process, and then COVID. And then by the time we actually went back to the clinic, I was 47. And they said, at your age, you have a 1% chance of having a child from your own egg. And there's quite a high likelihood of quite significant genetic differences. Because of my job, I work with children and families, some of whom have quite significant challenges. While I advocate for those children and those families, I know as much as you can know without being the parent how difficult those situations can be. So we took the decision to take the donor egg route because we wanted to have a child. I think because of my age, I did grieve a little bit that it wasn't my egg, but I think because I was older, I didn't have that long a process where I was grieving that. I was just felt so fortunate that we might actually have a chance to have a child. So we selected a donor, and we went through the process, and we were extremely fortunate that it worked first time. So I gave birth when I was 48. So that was the story up until birth. I don't know how much more you want, or if you wanted to ask anything, or
So, say, how do you find, obviously it's very hard to say without knowing the other alternative, but how do you find being a parent later in life? How is that contributing to your parenting that you did not become a parent in your 20s, 30s?
yeah. So I think in terms of my parenting, it's a definite bonus. I think probably also because of my job, because I switched to be a pediatric occupational therapist when I was older also. So the combination of life experience and later professional experience, I think, has only been a positive. Um, so in that sense, I think there's a certain amount of being relaxed and calm in the approach to certain things. There's with perspective of being a certain age and seeing certain things in life that you sort of think, okay, let's wait for being very. I do get stressed and I do get worried, so I can't say that I don't get stressed and worried, but it's a different kind of stress and worry, and I think I hold it more rather than transferring it on in my parenting. So I think I hold a lot of it, whereas possibly when I was younger, I might have transferred it more or more obviously. I'm sure some of it's going through because we can't not. Um, but I think that's certainly from the benefits. And I'd say between us, we're quite relaxed and we manage differences or even discussions about parenting really well. I'm really proud of like how we're doing, and our son's really happy. So I think in terms of the positives, I think those are certainly true, and they wouldn't have been true when I was younger, and they wouldn't have been true even when we first met.
Yeah. Do you find any particular challenges that come from specifically from age?
Uh, touch wood, physically so far, no. I mean, I think I never really thought about age before. I've been very fortunate so far. So physically, no. I didn't have a child when I was younger. I am tired, but I'm not fatigued. I feel like I'm tired like anyone would be from not sleeping that well. I have quite a stressful job. Um, there's been lots of personal things happening in my sort of wider family. So this has been the hardest year probably ever in my life. So I think considering that, I don't feel challenges physically. I don't think I do mentally either, in terms of I don't feel that I can't cope with things. I feel like I'm holding a huge amount. Um, so yeah, I don't feel that. The biggest burden is my own thoughts actually about being older.
Mm. How did you find emotionally that transition of becoming a mother?
I'm probably gonna get upset. I had a very difficult um experience post birth. So I think when we started the treatment, I didn't think it was going to work. I don't think my husband did either. Um, and we were quite worried when I was pregnant that something would go wrong. And then fortunately it didn't. But I had a very good pregnancy. I was healthy throughout. I didn't have diabetes. I didn't have any difficulties. Then when my son was born, my blood pressure shot up and it wasn't detected, first of all. So I then rushed to the hospital. I was in hospital for 10 days, so it wasn't a very good start in that respect. Um, it was, I mean, the good thing is that my husband and my son were there and my mum was here. So there were a lot of people around and we were together. So in terms of bonding, initial parenting, that was very good, but it was extremely stressful and traumatizing for me personally. Um, And so it took a long time for me to not to recover from that. So I think that it didn't interrupt the way I was parenting. I don't think I was happy. I'm fundamentally a pretty happy person and I was still joyful. So I was joyful and happy, but I was carrying a lot of anxiety and worry myself. So the transition, it was probably more about me feeling vulnerable. It wasn't so much about, oh, I'm a parent now in terms of struggling from, not having someone to look after. It was more the weight of, oh, I feel so vulnerable at the time when I need to not be vulnerable. That was what happened for me because of the situation that happened. Um, so I think it's that. I mean, I don't really feel, I think, again, one of the benefits of being older, and not that I never want to go out and party again or do things, but I had so many years where I could do what I wanted to do. I don't feel burdened by parenting. I didn't feel a big shift in that way. I know some people say, oh, they really struggle with like becoming a parent when they've had so long not being a parent. I haven't felt that at all. Because it's what I wanted. It just took a while to get there. But the emotional toll of my particular story, coupled with my propensity for worry, has been what's been challenging.
Mm. Is it because of the worry around physical health, or did you translate it in a way that impacted you?
It's the worry about that because I always worried about that from when I was tiny. So that's partly me. I think also partly the job I do. I work in healthcare. I work with people. Um, I've still been very fortunate in my life with so far not experiencing too much loss, but yeah, I have many friends and I have experienced some loss. So it's just all of those things adding up that I think when you're younger, of course, you know that people become sick or they die. You don't, maybe if you're fortunate, you haven't experienced it as much. You don't really know, you don't have the emotional experience of it. You just know that it happens, but you're not so close to it. Some in the background. Um, so I think it's the worry. So it's touch wood, as I say, it's not that I am unwell. It's just the worry about what can happen and how quickly things can happen and how difficult things can become.
Mm, I get that.
And I think also because my grandmother lived to be 100, my mum's 82, I think so. And and there are lots of women in my mum's family that have lived a long life. I think there was part of me just not assuming, but I feel a bit like, oh, who are you to think that you can assume you'll have the same and you've just brought a life into your world? Like, is that okay? I wouldn't change it for a second. I don't regret it. But there is part of me that thinks I must have just assumed that that would be me. But you can't make assumptions about these things.
Yeah, yeah. Do you feel like that those 10 days or the experience of that is somehow shaping the relationship that you have with your son, or the feeling?
No, no, I don't feel like that 10 days has shaped our relationship. I'm trying very hard also not to worry about being older. So I don't feel at this point that that's being transferred. But of course, we never know what gets transferred. But that's, it's a burden for me, but I don't feel like that's being transitioned onto him at the moment.
Mm, that's good. How old is he at the moment?
He is 19 months.
Oh, wow. Little one.
Yeah.
How do
So he's
you,
just
yeah.
gone from being a baby to a toddler already in the last month or so.
Oh. How do you see yourself in the upcoming years as a mother? Do you have like a vision for yourself?
Um, I guess my vision is that I hope that I continue to be joyful and playful and that whatever life throws at me, that stays. I think it will. has, and it stayed in my mom, and I would say in a different way in my grandmother. So I hope that that is the case. Um, Finding the balance between being boundaried without being too harsh, but doing the right thing by my child and being fun. So yeah, I don't know. I still, not that I don't believe he's here, because he is, but as I say, because of the whole thing was just a succession of steps that I never imagined would actually result in having a child. I don't really think too much about how things will look. I'm a very conscious parent. I read a lot of things. I talk about things a lot, but it's more to do with what's happening in the present, not reflecting on what's going to happen in the future. So I don't really know. And I hope to hang on to joy and happiness and being as regulated as I can to not be stressed out about things I shouldn't be stressed out about towards him.
Yeah, I get that. I get that. Do you find yourself that you manage to stay regulated?
No, I think I don't do too badly. I mean, I feel extremely guilty. Like the other day, I just went, "Arr!" And I was like, oh, EC, just like that. And then I felt so bad because I was like, oh, he's a 19-month-old. It's not him, and that's not bad. But he just looked at me a bit sort of perplexed, and I was like, oh God, I feel so bad. Like that's just not right to do that. But I think in the scheme of things, I do pretty well. Or if I do speak like in a tone of voice I don't like, and with my husband, I'll just say sorry straight away, because for me, it's like, okay, these things happen, but as long as someone acknowledges it, then that's fine. And I think it's the same with kids. Like, we're all humans. If something happens like that, tone of voice, speaking a bit loud, then you acknowledge it and you say, actually, that was on me. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that. And I think that sort of is a more realistic and a more healthy approach than saying, okay, I'll never lose it. Just knowing that if I do, that I will always acknowledge it and take responsibility for it. But I think I don't do too badly, considering, I'd say there's been lots of personal stuff. I have a stressful job, being a parent anyway, not having, not having, we don't have family nearby. I don't really know people with babies. So I have some very good friends, but their kids are much older. So I think I'm doing well considering a lot of factors so
Yeah.
far.
In your experience, how would you describe the relationship between a mother and a child, or specifically between your little one and you?
Um, Very playful, very nurturing. Well, he's nurturing to me, but he's not doing it intentionally. He's responding. I'm intentionally nurturing of him, playful. Um, give leaving him, providing him with opportunities for exploration and excitement about the world, and opportunities to figure out things and problem solve and make things fun and find joy in little things like hiding behind a wall or making a certain face, or I don't know. Yeah, just creating safety and comfort and joy and exploration and openness.
Do you feel like you've taken certain things from your own parents and the way that they were parenting, or do you feel like that you kind of radiated away from the childhood that you had?
So I definitely took certain things, probably more from my mom, which is more emotional. My dad is not alive anymore, but he's emotionally very restricted, not very accessible. So it's those things that I pay more attention to. I mean, I'm not like that actually anyway, but um, so I definitely take. So my mom's very joyful, and I have memories still of tapping her, saying, question, 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 poking, poking, poking. In those times, she was always very calm. She was always answering my question. Like there was no question that was too little or too, I haven't got time for this now. She would get stressed at other times, which I try not to do in the way that she did, but we had very different circumstances. But I think the joy and the openness and the sort of comfort I take from what I had in that way.
And are there any things that you specifically said to yourself that you don't want to repeat?
Yes. So my dad used to sometimes say I'd ask a question. He would just say, "Oh, because I said so." And I used to hate that and found it very infuriating. And I said if I had kids, I would never say that. Now, I mean that in terms of maybe if he's asked the same question like 50 times and I've already given the answer every time, I might come to it that, but not as a first line answer, which is what I feel like I got sometimes. Um, so that, and yeah, like I say, with my dad, I couldn't really express myself, or if I did, I wouldn't be responded to. So I'm very aware of, I mean, I do it anyway, but I'm very aware of it, of how important it is to be responsive, um, physically or even just with your face or the way that your tone of voice. So I'm very aware of that. I do it anyway and it makes me feel good, but I also know how bad it feels when it doesn't happen.
Mm. Do you feel like that you becoming a parent has recontextualized your relationship with your parents or the way that you?
I don't think so. I think probably if anything, I just have more understanding of the times that my mum got stressed because she had more than one child and she had very difficult circumstances. So it's probably made me appreciate how difficult some things were, but it hasn't changed our relationship.
Yeah. Do you have something for yourself that you still want to achieve as a parent, some parenting goal for yourself?
Um, to make it through the toddler years and not feel like I belong to all these parenting groups and I'm forever reading about, I can't cope anymore and I don't like my child anymore. I understand it's normal, people go through pockets, but like I would kind of like to still embrace that outlook of, this is all interesting and aren't we fortunate that we have this person and that we get to watch these developmental steps. I would like to hang on to that as much as possible, and not be bogged down by, oh, why can't they do this or why are they doing this? I'd like to hold on to the interesting side and opportunity and fortune and taking that perspective of things, be able to enjoy it more and hopefully he enjoy it more.
Yeah, yeah. I really appreciate how conscious you are being about parenting. I think this is a generational thing that my generation, as a child, I didn't get that for sure.
Well, I'm sorry for you because yeah, I did in some respects and I didn't in others, and I know how difficult it was for me anyway, not getting it in the ways that I got it. And I was very lucky that I did get it in the ways that I did get it as well.
Yeah, yeah. How would you describe your relationship with your parents, even if even if your father is not with us anymore, still there is
Uh,
a relationship there.
yeah, so that my relationship with my dad was very complicated. I didn't speak to him for 18 years because I was 18 and I went to au pair and I saw this very close knit family. And I thought, wait a minute, this is a bit more how fathers are meant to be with their kids. So I wrote him a letter and I was like, I don't really think our relationship is great with the intention of wanting to make it better. Um, we didn't really respond in that way. So we didn't speak for a long time because I sort of thought, well, I don't really care if you're blood, if you're not going to be kind and supportive, then that's not for me. Sorry. Um, and then we did get back in contact. Um, with therapy, I had worked through that I wasn't angry anymore. So I was able to be back in contact with him before he passed away for about 10 years. But I knew my relationship was never really very deep, to the point also when he passed away, it was like it was sad, but it wasn't, as I'd already spent so long grieving not having the relationship, that I wasn't even that sad when he died, because I'd spent so long grieving not having a what I saw as a father. I don't want to say proper father because he was my father, but as I would have liked a father and how I see other fathers. With my mom, I've always had a very good relationship. Again, I think after therapy, I was a bit more boundaried, because she's very smart and she's very insightful, but doesn't mean that she's always right. And I think I had a difficulty when I was younger, sometimes not seeing that she was always right and that I could know my own truth. So I think even before EC, it hasn't. I don't think our relationship has changed since he's been here. And I'm so grateful to her because she came. She was 80 and she came from the US with my stepdad. She stayed an extra week. They cooked, they cleaned, they did everything. They came to the hospital. So, and then I went to stay with her and then for 6 weeks. So, um, very fortunate to have that. But yeah, that hasn't changed. Like, it's always been like that. She's always been loving and supportive like that. Um, but as I say, when I was younger, I think probably I didn't trust myself as much as I do now. And I probably came to that quite late. Like maybe some people come to that in their 20s, and I came to it when I was about 40.
I get it though. I absolutely get it. And I have a very similar, both of my parents are still alive, but I talk to them, sorry, I don't talk to them, and I talk about them in the past tense. So I very
Mm,
much relate to the experience of wanting to have a certain relationship with your parent, and it's just not that. And it's never going to
yeah.
be with that person.
I'm sorry for you. It's just,
Yeah. It's a very tricky situation.
yeah, yeah, it is.
Do you have any it's a weird question and I don't want to put it out there, but do you have any fears about parenting? Something that you are trying to mitigate or you're
Mm,
trying to do something about now before it becomes a problem?
I think probably the worry. So, you know, every day thinking about how old I am and how old I'm going to be when he's a certain age, if I'm still alive, and what state I might be in is not going to be healthy for, it's not healthy for me, but it's not going to be good for him. I would never vocalize it, but I know that, I think so many things are so implicit. So I know that that's something I need to better manage than I am now. Um, I'd say that's the main thing. I think also, which I'm ashamed of and I hate it, is I know full well, I work with kids and families and I have friends. And I think whatever someone else does, if you're out and someone's looking at you, doesn't matter what they think. And I find myself sometimes, because my son is quite emotional. Like he's like me. He's like, he gets happy, really happy. If he gets sad, he's quite, I assume, quite loud because people look, and I find myself embarrassing, and I'm ashamed of that because it's disrespectful to him because it's none of their business. And I know objectively it's none of their business, but I'm still responding to it. So I need to change that because I don't like that about myself as a parent. And I'm surprised that I'm doing that actually.
Mm.
And I really don't like it and I don't respect it of myself.
Aw. Did you find any resources for yourself that help you with these?
Yes. Yeah. So I read things, but I think I need to do a bit more conscious, like not just meditation in general, and more mindful activities for myself to just bring everything down a notch because it's easier. I know, certainly with myself, if I'm more stressed and other things are quite ramped up, probably the same for other people, but I can only speak for myself that when things are a bit calmer, then it makes those challenges easier to manage.
Mm.
So I know telling myself, you shouldn't think that doesn't work. That's not how our minds work.
Yeah.
And I know that I shouldn't think it, and I don't think it matters. But I have found myself in situations where I'm like, oh God, they're looking like, and I don't like that. I'd like to not do that anymore.
Do you have any specific a book or a podcast or something that like really stays with you?
Yeah, I mean, I follow a lot of gentle parenting groups, and there's Janet Lansbury, the name that comes up a lot, and Sarah Ockwell Smith, I think her name is. So I read lots of things, and they resonate with me. But for me, it's still in the moment, being able to apply what I believe is about my emotional state at the time. And so for me, that needs more meditation, more exercise, more being able to reflect in the moment
Do you feel like
on
you
those things.
can give yourself those things? Do you have enough time or enough?
I think it's a matter of making time. I mean, I have quite a long commute to work when I do go into the office, so I can use time for that. Or, if my husband does bedtime and I'm clearing up, even if I'm doing something else, I think there are ways of doing these things which I'm probably not doing so well at the moment. Could do better. Not saying that in a judgy way. I'm saying that as in like objectively, I think I can do better, and I'm sure it will come because I think it's hard having a kid, and it takes a while to get into a rhythm. And then you also realize that actually you can't be waiting for a time where there's no stress or no problem because life is full of stress and problems. So you just have to take the opportunities where they're there and fill them with the things that you want and you need to do in as calm a way as possible. That's how I would look at it now. Because I was very, and I know I got to 48 with only really experiencing one bit of loss, which was my grandmother. I had a very tight relationship with my dad, but I hadn't really experienced much else. And so I'd go through periods where things were a bit difficult and then they'd calm again. And I'm like, okay, good, now it's calm. But like in the last 6 months, my brother was in a very serious accident. Fortunately, he's okay, but we didn't know if he was going to live. He's had a traumatic brain injury. My stepdad had cancer and my dad died. I lost part of my hearing through misdiagnosis. So all these things snowballed. And it's like, actually, there isn't necessarily that period where things are okay because you don't know what's coming. And I know for years that I sort of had it coming to me because I lived for so long without very bad things happening. Then they started to happen. And I'm like, this is what happened. You just have to take those good patches and use them. And you can't wait for the calm to carry on because you don't know when the next thing that's going to be challenging is coming. As I say, I knew that before because I was watching other people around me have that. So um, I kind of feel like I'm now getting what many people had maybe drip fed, but it's been condensed into about 6 months.
Mm. Do you feel yourself being resourced enough to deal with it?
Yes. I mean, fortunate, privileged. I have a husband. I have a caring husband. I work in an extremely supportive place. I have some really good friendships and I have some really good family. So I'm extremely fortunate. Even with that, it's very hard. So I can only imagine for someone that doesn't have those things how it would be because it's still hard. It's been a hard 6 months.
If you had a recipe book for parenting, for a good parent-child relationship, what would be your ingredients? Those
Yeah,
necessities that this has to happen or this has to be.
that's a good question. So one is remembering that your child's brain is developing, that they are a child, not an adult. Sorry, baby, you okay? Do you need me? Okay. Yeah, so that holding that in mind, that to think of your child as a child, not not an adult. Think of them as a human being, how they'd want to be thought of and spoken to and treated. So with respect, not, the sort of, not sort of because I said so and not be quiet, but actually what do they need? What are they trying to tell you? What's difficult for them? Um, Fun, joy, um, and yeah, exploration. So giving them opportunities to discover how exciting things are and how things work, and that every question's good, and that life is this big opportunity to be explored and also to have fun.
Oh, this sounds
So,
this sounds like a very good recipe for a good family.
yeah, I think so.
Thank you. Is there anything that I haven't asked that you would like to share?
Uh, just trying to think. I mean, no, I suppose everyone's coming to this with different stories, and yeah, I think mine is it's a bit what I said before. Like, I feel like maybe someone in their 20s would have what I have. I just come to the party late for everything. I was late to come into relationships. I was late for career change. I'm late to parenting. I'm always late to the party, but I enjoy myself when I get there. But probably I'm just a late bloomer. So I'm not sure if I'm representative of being older or if I'm just late.
And at the same time, who can tell what the right time for things are? Because what if you would have had those experiences 20 years earlier and you would have gone through your entire life or those 20 years full of anxiety, full of not
Yeah.
knowing who you are and what you want. So maybe this is the right time. And maybe the rest of the world is rushing a bit before they know who they are and before they have a solid ground.
Yeah. I mean, I feel very secure in the knowledge that it is. I mean, and say our son, he's really happy and he seems really securely attached and he's joyful and he's free, like, and he's free to explore and he's free to communicate and he's all these things that I would want for him. He is at the moment. And I'm just like, please let that stay. But I'm also so happy like that we've been able to do that. And I know that it's privilege as well because again, I work with families and so many people are in such difficult circumstances that
We got dropped off by Zoom and interrupted, and here we are. We have a guest. Look at you.
we are. He can't hear because I have headphones in. He can just see.
Aww.
Yeah, beauty. All right, onwards we okay.
Aww. But thank you so much for being here, for sharing your story. I really, really appreciate that. And your ingredients sound all like fun and exploration and understanding that their brains are just developing. They are all just they are a very good solid ground.
Yeah, thank you. Well, yeah, no, I'll be very excited to see the finished product.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing.